Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing things a little bit differently because I just got off of work and I feel like sitting on the floor. I'm going to be doing a video about how to make a dinosaur plush. Which dinosaur plush, you ask? Well, a Stegosaurus. I'm using two different colored fabrics for this project. The green will be for the body and the white is going to be for the spikes and the belly pieces. This project will work best with minky or fleece fabric. Here is just a quick overview of some of the supplies that I'm going to be using. We've got lots of different colored threads, dense fabric pieces that don't fray, puff paint, and scissors that will cut through pretty much anything, the Stegosaurus pattern. This pattern is free to download through the link in the description, so go ahead and check that out, a drawing device, and our dinosaur insides. In case you were curious, I'm on my fourth 20-pound box of Polyfil, and I think I purchased them all within the last year, so I don't know what that says about me. I started by tracing the body pattern on the wrong side of my green fabric. I flipped this pattern over and then traced it again and cut out these two pieces. On the wrong side of the white fabric, I traced the belly pattern and 3 spikes. The spike pattern does not have any seam allowance, so I did not cut it out directly on the line, but left a little bit of space. I flipped the fabric over and then pinned the spikes to the right side of the fabric. Once I cut these out, I had 3 separate spike pieces ready to sew. I'm going to be stitching each of them just like this. I'll leave the bottom open so that we can flip it right side out later on. Here is a quick visual of what we're working with. I sewed all 3 of the spikes together, I stitched directly on the line, and then lowered the needle and lifted my sewing foot to change the direction of my fabric as I sewed. I trimmed the extra fabric and then turned the spikes right side out. I used my fabric scissors to push out all the points, but be very careful when you do this to not cut through your fabric. I'm going to attach the spikes to the body like this. I used 2 pins per spike to hold them in place since these like to move around a lot. To complete this dinosaur sandwich, I placed the other body piece on top, and then I pinned everything in place. I removed the pins from the inside that were originally holding the spikes because half the time that I break a needle on my machine, it's because of hidden pins like this. I sewed along the top edge of my Steggie, taking the pins out as I reached them. 4 layers of minky is a lot of fabric to sew through, so I had to push it through the machine a bit. I trimmed away the extra fabric and pinned the body to the belly piece. I started by pinning each of the legs in place and then working my way around the rest of the fabric. Since we were on the topic of dinosaurs, I want to relive a part of my past. So when I was a kid, I used to love the Land Before Time movies. I would watch them over and over again. I had all the sequels. It was all on VHS because 90s kids, but I freaking love those movies. And part of the reason I loved it so much is because they had a dinosaur on there named Sarah. And I thought, how cool is that? There's a dinosaur on this show that has the same name as me. I did always think it was a little strange that there was really quirky names for all the dinosaurs, like Littlefoot and Spike and Chomper or Petrie, and then all of a sudden there was this random normal name like Sarah. Just didn't understand. I was like, God, that's so weird that they would just put a random normal name in there, like my name in there. I kid you not, guys. I did not realize that Sarah was an abbreviation for Triceratops until I was at least 20. With that wonderful piece of information about Sarah's life, let's jump back into sewing. Not going to lie, guys, this is usually the hardest part for me to sew. I think one of the reasons I have so much trouble with this is because the plush is so small, but you'll see when I have to sew over the center seam of the face, I reposition all the fabric underneath my needle, and this is to stop it from pinching. So this is just one of the challenges of making something in a smaller size. I think that there is a common misconception among the general population that just because a craft is smaller that it's easier to make. So this could be anything from like polymer clay, it could be like a small painting, in my case stuffed animals. I only really know the sewing side of things, but I actually find that people assume it's so easy to make something just because it's like a smaller size. I don't think that's the case at all. While I spend less money and materials when I make things smaller, it actually requires a lot more skill to be able to execute it. It's definitely hard to get around all those intricate corners and all the details. So with that being said, if you want to scale this pattern up, go ahead and do that. I'm pretty sure that if you have a computer with paint, you can just do the scale feature. I sewed the entire belly onto my Steggie Plush and left a small gap to flip it between two of the legs. I trimmed the extra fabric again. Trust me, if you skip this step, you're going to regret it. It just won't look as smooth and clean once you flip it right side out. So now it is time to flip this thing. I feel like I never leave a big enough hole to flip the stuffed animals that I make, so you'll generally see me struggle with this for quite a while. It is really satisfying though when you finally are able to get it to turn right side out. I'm using my fabric scissors to push out the legs, but if you want to live less dangerously, you can take home a pair of chopsticks from your favorite Asian restaurant and use those instead. I'm one of those classy people that eats sushi with my hands, so I have a ton of chopsticks. We will be using all of this stuffing for this plush. I added the stuffing through the small hole in the side. Make sure that you also stuff the feet. One of my favorite comments I received on this design is how cute and inefficient its little legs were, so I actually ended up making an entire set of inefficient dinosaur plushies, which maybe I'll show you guys at some point if you're interested in learning how to make other types of dinosaurs. I'm using the black felt for the eyes, and it is impossible for me to cut a perfect circle, so I took the easy road and bought a pack of pre-cut felt from Etsy. You can find a ton of different shapes and sizes if you shop around a little bit, or if you are more precise and more skilled than me at cutting out felt, you can just give it a try yourself. I used a whip stitch to attach the eyes, and I found this diagram for what that looks like when right-handed people do it. If you don't like the process of hand stitching, hot glue would probably work too. I repeated the same process for the other eye. Now it is time to give this guy a little bit of personality. We are going to be giving him a little heart design. I threaded my needle with pink thread and tied a knot on one end. I used a whip stitch again to attach this felt heart. It kind of reminds me of the My Little Pony characters and how they all had designs on their thighs. Is that what it's called? I don't really know horse anatomy. This is like My Little Dinosaur instead, and he doesn't really have thighs. Now it's time to perform emergency surgery on this guy. You will have to hand stitch this part. Trust me, there is no good way to hot glue this shut unless you want him to have a giant goopy scar on his side and you like burning your fingers. Not speaking from experience or anything. I closed up the side of the plush with a ladder stitch and didn't talk during this next part so that you could hear the stitches pull together. We could call this plush done now, but I couldn't leave him with those cold, dead eyes, the look of being rejected by the world and those he loved, eyes leading into a black hole of despair. So we are going to add a little white fabric paint. I realize that this bottle is worn out and you can't read the label, but luckily I have another one in black that still has words on it. I violently shook my nearly empty bottle to get more paint out since I'm too lazy to buy a new one, and why waste it? We are just going to add a little sparkle to his eyes. Suddenly, the world isn't such a bad place. If you decide to use fabric paint to add this detail, you're going to need to let it dry. Once you've let this dry for a little bit, your plush will be done. Now he's ready to roam the grasslands and eat whatever it is that stegosauruses eat. He's got the spikes to defend himself against predators. And that's about all I know about dinosaurs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you learned a little bit about the sewing process for making stuffed animals, and since you made it this far, don't forget that the download to this pattern is in the description if you want to try this one for yourself. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this in the future, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye!